Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
6 o'clock, so we'll get going. Good. All right, good evening, and it is my pleasure and privilege to call to order this inaugural meeting of the CPAR. We're located at the Bennington Firehouse in the multi-purpose room. First order of business is organization, so I will call for nominations at this time for vice chair for this committee.
I'd like to nominate Will.
One nomination for Will. Do I hear any other? Any discussion?
Are there times where you won't be here throughout the year, or?
No, I have a
Okay, yeah, just wondering.
You do have the option to be sick. No, I will be here for at least the next 2 years, but hopefully more after that.
Okay. Do I hear any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor of Will as our vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Will, congratulations, and the meeting is yours.
Thank you, everybody. Yes, and thank you, Robert, for the nomination. Now, how do you want me to proceed?
You now have to call for nominations for chair.
Okay, just state it like that? Okay. Are there any nominations for chair of the board?
I nominate Kelly. I think it makes sense. She's going to be here for 3 years. That'll give us a nice, smooth ride through those years.
Any other nominations? All right, hearing none, do we all vote to nominate or to make Kelly our chair of the committee?
Yes.
Yes?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any nays? Abstaining?
Kelly, you abstain.
Are you going to abstain?
I guess, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't say both. Are you going to? Okay. Okay.
Just a little lie.
The vote is unanimous, and Kelly is the chair of the board.
I would like, well, first of all, thank you. I would like to take nominations for recorder. Do we have any nominations?
I
Robert?
nominate Mark.
I do that a lot, I could do that.
Great.
But if somebody else would like to do it, I'd be happy to give them a
Sarah,
chance.
we're taking those.
Do we have?
I see Jeff really itching, I think.
He wants to be part of the community.
Do we have any other nominations? Can I get a vote on Marsh for recorder?
Aye.
Aye. The vote is unanimous. Congratulations, Marsh, you are now our recorder.
So don't talk too fast, because I did bring my computer. I'm ready.
Okay. Tom, do we just go, I go on to the next agenda?
Just go down the agenda,
Okay.
yep.
So the second item on our agenda is to establish our meeting structure. Right now, it is set up at the fourth Tuesday, or the fourth Thursday of the month. We need to talk about what time we want to have the meeting, how long, if there are any standing items that for that, and if it's going to stay the fourth Thursday of the month, we need to talk about November, because the fourth Thursday of the month is Thanksgiving, and it would be probably a good idea to talk about changing it to the week before of November 17th. So,
So I move we change the next, we're supposed to be recognized, you can go.
Oh, okay. I propose that we make our regular meeting days the third Thursday of each month.
we have a proposal for the third Thursday of the month for our meetings. Do we have any discussion on that?
Is
Need a
that,
second? Do we have to take a
Oh, I'm sorry.
second? Okay.
I'll second
What do I
it.
have to do? This is going to be a learning experience, and I thank you in advance for your patience on my learning curve.
So I seconded it.
Okay. Jeff?
we need to get that cleared to make sure the room's available, correct?
The room is reserved for the 4 Thursdays going forward, the conflicts being Thanksgiving. Is Christmas on Thursday?
Yeah, but we're talking about third Thursdays.
Third Thursdays.
Yeah, so we would have to
Okay.
change.
We'd have to check and make sure if the room's
Okay,
available.
so would we be good to vote on it with the understanding that it needs to be confirmed,
Right.
the availability?
Room has to be available.
I'd like to just have a little discussion on that. If we move it to the third Thursday, are we gonna keep the second Thursday of the month, or are we gonna, or maybe I've misinterpreted, I thought we were meeting second and fourth Thursdays of the
No.
month. It's just one Thursday
It's
a
just
month?
one Thursday a month.
Misinterpreted that.
One Thursday a month, not the 4th.
And it seems likely that that's gonna go because we talked about the third Thursday in November
Right.
and nobody said, oh, the such and such board meets, so I think we're probably safe, but you're right to check that.
We could vote on a pending room approval.
Yes.
Yeah, pending.
So, do we have a motion?
We have a motion, the second we need to vote.
So, yeah, okay, so we have the motion, the second, now we have,
Okay.
we don't need another
Discussion.
motion to vote?
No,
No.
all discussion. and-
Okay, so then can we have the vote? Ayes for moving it to the third Thursday?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous? So the meeting will now be on the third Thursday of the month, pending confirmation of availability of the room. And next month is Thanksgiving, so we would start on the 17th because we voted for that pending, or?
Pending, yep.
So the next meeting will be the 17th.
Great.
So the next question would be, right now, the agenda that we have tonight is from 6 to 8:30. Do we want to keep the 6 o'clock start time? And how long do we want to go? And are there any issues that we should put on the agenda all the time? Jeff?
I have a question. So if we made a motion to leave everything like that for now, is that something we can change at a later meeting if we
Oh, sure.
find it doesn't work? Okay, I make a motion, we try that.
Okay, do we have a second?
Do we want to have it from 6 to 8:30 or 6 not to exceed 8:30?
Well, I think that's a given, right?
Well, we need a second on this motion before I
We
can
need, yeah, a second on the
continue
motion
discussion.
to,
I'll second.
Thanks.
My concern is if we put in our agenda that our meetings are going to be from 6 to 8:30, and somebody reads that our agenda is we're going to meet from 6 to 8:30, somebody may show up at 8 o'clock with a question, a comment, concern, and we didn't have much to go over that night, so we left it at 7:45. And now we've got somebody angry because we said we would be here until 8:30. So if we write it up that we're gonna start at 6 and we'll go no later than 8:30, that kind of gives us the ability to leave early if we accomplish our goals for the agenda for that night.
I have a question. So one of the other things to discuss, I guess, is when the public speaking portion
Right.
public speaking portion would be, and if we have it at the beginning or the end. If we have it at the end, that could be a concern. If we have it at the beginning, and that is the period for public comment, then that end time would be irrelevant at that point, I would think.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, someone might decide on purpose, I'm not
Yeah.
going to go until 8:15.
Okay.
It goes till 8:30. So, yeah, I mean, the language saying to go no later than 8:30 kind of gives us a little wiggle room. Yeah.
Or,
I can tell you from my experience, the times on agendas are flexible, shall we say. Every select board meeting is, the agenda says we get out at 8. We never, ever get out at 8. Sometimes we've gotten out early, most times we get out later. But I wouldn't put in language saying no later than 8:30 because that's a hard stop.
Then we
If you
have
have
to
business that you have to finish,
Okay.
you may go past that.
You know the language the select board uses to say 6 to 8 or whatever it is?
It's really up to the chair to set the times.
Okay.
And a lot of that is a little bit of guesswork on how much time each individual agenda item is going to take.
Right.
Sometimes they'll guess it's going to take 20 minutes and it takes 10. Sometimes they think it's going to take 10 minutes and you're talking about it for an hour. It really, once you're in the live meeting, the chair has a lot more discretion on how much discussion to continue to allow. So I wouldn't recommend setting yourselves a hard stop time.
Okay.
But really what you need to establish tonight is the start time. And then as your chair works up your agenda, the projected end time will just develop from there.
Okay. So the motion is to keep it the way it's written currently, 6 to 8:30.
And who made the motion to have it on the third Thursday?
oh, I did.
That was Robert.
And who seconded it?
You did.
I did. Okay, thanks. You can tell by short-term memory. Sure.
Okay, so we need to vote on the second, right?
So all those in favor of keeping the meeting time from 6 to 8:30 as is, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? So the meetings will be on the third Thursday from 6 until 8:30. So the next item would be to talk about any standing items that we want to have on the agenda.
I move that time be made for public comment at the beginning of each meeting.
Is that the third agenda item?
Yes. Public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, so.
that's a whole nother agenda.
So this is where we would say that public comment should be on every agenda.
That's a standing item, right?
as-
Yeah, standing item, and then we'll discuss the details later.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion on any standing items?
Do we make a motion on that and second it, that that's one of them? And then later discuss the details?
Sure, if you want to.
Okay.
All right, second.
Is that the best way to handle it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a motion on the floor, you might as well just close it
I'll
out.
second it.
Okay, great.
Um,
And the motion is to make time for public comments at the beginning of each meeting.
No, the motion is to include public comments as a standing item on every agenda.
Well, he
And
Well, that's
then-
not
change his
okay,
motion.
So we have to back up, because that's not
Okay.
the motion I made. So
Okay.
I will withdraw the motion I
You have to withdraw your second.
I withdraw my second.
made. Look at us.
Now you want to make your new motion?
No, I'm not quite sure I understand it, so someone
Okay.
else might want to make it.
Well, I'll make a motion that we include public comment as a standing item.
Okay, good. Second.
Second. Is there anyone who would like to have discussion on that? Can we take a vote on including public comment as a standing item on every agenda item? Or every agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Is there anything else that we should have as a standing item on the agenda?
Do we have an approval of minutes? Does that need to be part of what we're doing?
Generally, at the beginning of the meeting, you would approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
So do we need to make that a standing item, or do we just do it?
Is that part of Robert's rules?
Yeah, it's part of the, it's
So
part
if
of the
we're following
structure.
Robert's rules for meetings, then it's part of the
Really what we're wondering here is, are there any items within your charge that you think should be discussed at every meeting?
I think
You
once
can
we,
always add more later.
Yeah,
once we get some committees,
Right.
I would think committee reports would want to go somewhere in the regular part, but we don't have any yet.
That's in Robert's rules as well.
Yeah.
Committee reports, approval of previous meeting minutes.
But you haven't decided to form committees yet.
Right.
So right now, the only thing that would be definite would be public comment.
Right.
And then yet to be determined where we go with the remainder.
So do we have to or want to include reminding ourselves of the town's vision? That was central to our calling. And it seems like that might be a worthwhile thing to remind ourselves each time we get together what we're really aiming for up at the top of the pile. So I guess I'd like to move that we make sharing the vision for the town a normal element or a standing element.
I'll second
So we have a motion and a second to have the town vision including as a standing item on every agenda item, or every agenda. Is there any discussion on this? Jeff?
Is this the same as the CPAR goals on the website?
No.
A different?
Yes,
Okay.
it's not- At the firehouse, maybe 2 years ago, we had maybe 60
Okay.
people from the community that got together and brainstormed a vision for the whole town, that
Okay.
everybody be welcome and have hopefully an equal opportunity to thrive and be respected and welcomed and
Okay.
that kind of thing.
that. And I think they recited it every select board meeting.
One person does, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's right at the beginning of the meeting,
Okay.
right after the pledge.
Any other discussion before we take a vote? So there is a motion on the floor for, to include the town vision as a standing item in the agenda for every meeting. And can we take a vote on that?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you. Anything else for discussion for standing item?
Well, you just saying that reminded me, should we include the Pledge of Allegiance? Is that standard at meetings like this or not?
Some boards do it, some don't.
Okay.
I move that the Pledge of Allegiance not be a part of our monthly meeting.
I second that.
So we have a motion on the floor with a second to not have the Pledge of Allegiance included at the beginning of every meeting. Is there any discussion on that?
I guess I don't disagree. I was just wondering why.
We'd have a motion to not do something.
Why the
What?
Why would we have a motion not to do something?
I think he's asking why we wouldn't.
Why would-
Why wouldn't we want, I think the
Do
question
you
is.
feel that it would alienate people that were here, or is it just like a personal preference? I mean,
I guess it's a personal preference. I don't generally like oaths and pledges as part of public meetings. I don't like it at the select board. I just want to come and do our business here. I don't know if it's much of an explanation, but it's more of how I feel about it than anything logical that I can come up with.
okay.
I feel a little uncomfortable. When I guess my primary allegiance is to everybody. And when it's a smaller group than everybody, it just makes me feel a little uncomfortable. And you know, when we get into international affairs, my loyalty is the well-being of everybody rather than just people on my block or my neighborhood. So that's why I hesitate about that.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay.
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 I'll just abstain.
I'm going to abstain as well.
So We have 2 for it, 2 against it, and 2 abstentions.
So the
Tom?
motion,
Advises.
the motion fails.
It fails.
The motion fails.
I think that's where that 7th member would come in pretty handy.
Are there any other motions for standing items at the,
I would recommend that you discuss under meeting structure also, how often you want the police to be in attendance at your meetings.
Say that again.
I just recommend that.
I didn't hear
talk
you
about
say.
that. How often do you want the police to participate in your meetings at all? Do you want
The
them-
police. I'd like the police to participate when we ask them.
Is that a motion?
do we have a,
No, that's my opinion.
we have a motion to have the police participate when requested?
No, I'm not making a motion, I'm just responding to what he said, giving him my opinion. I'd like them to come to our meetings when we ask them to come to our meeting.
Can I make a motion?
You can make a motion.
I motion that we have the police here at the beginning of meetings on a quarterly basis, and that they come there with a report that culminates all of the questions that people have had over the past few meetings, and we can give them that report. And we think that's comfortable. That way they can get back to us.
Well, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm kind of speaking to Kelly. That we do it quarterly, and that we give them a culminated question report of what people have brought up at the meeting so that they can come here and answer it. Not on a regular basis, but, I mean, and just come at the very beginning, I feel like. I don't know if we can discuss the logistics of that right now.
Because
I think we would need them here to discuss anything other than having them show up upon request. And then, even then, depending on what's going on in town, they may or may not be able to make it.
And am I allowed to speak too? Okay, I wasn't sure on that, thank God, because I didn't come up with that. In the resolution for the Community Policing Advisory Review Board, under meetings, it does say that the CPARD may form subgroups and engage the community in CPARD work as appropriate. The chief of police or designee will attend all CPARD meetings and report on BPD matters as requested. So this says that the expectation is that there would be somebody here at all meetings. Is that right?
We don't have a second on this motion yet.
Okay.
We can't discuss it.
Can we get a second on the motion to have BPD here on a quarterly basis?
I second it so we can talk.
Good.
Are they able to come, seeing that this is open to the public, they're able to come to every meeting if they so choose, is
if
that?
if they choose to come as private citizens, they
Okay.
can come regardless.
Okay.
But then they'd be restricted to only public comment
Okay.
and so on and so forth.
And if I can speak, well, one, I don't know how you can prove on they have to come when we ask them to come. Quarterly is kind of stilted. Does that mean we can't talk to them except every 3 months? You say, if we're going to request them to come, what if they can't come? What if they can't come on the day of the quarterly meeting? I also think we need to start. I've enjoyed all the training with the police. I think it's all been valuable, and I certainly want them included in all of this. But I don't think we need the police here at every meeting. We're us. We're the board. If we need information from the police, we ask them to come or at least to provide us with the information. We need to kind of start separating ourselves from the police department itself. We've got a lot of training on the police perspective of things. We need to start getting more training and information on the community's perspective of things. So I know what it says there, and I think we can change that. I don't think we have to go by those guidelines. So I'm not in favor of the police automatically attending every meeting.
I would recommend that you, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. But the select board had drafted that language. So to change it, you would have to ask us to change it.
I mean, it's.
Which, all I can say is that you are more than welcome to ask. I can make sure it gets on the agenda. And then if you want to send a representative to speak your case, I think it would be received.
I make a motion that we direct our liaison.
Already got a motion.
Oh, already got a motion, okay. This is part of the discussion of that motion, okay, I'm sorry.
Marsh?
So, I like what you're saying and don't disagree with any of it. And the thing that sticks in my mind as we're having this discussion is discussions we had on the task force, which was the desire to be even-handed. And so, to me, it would be appealing if the police were invited to every meeting at the beginning. And then if they had concerns that they wanted us to consider, or if they had reflections on things we had done, that we could have dialogue. But that we would be expecting that we would not have police represented at all times at all meetings. And that's ambivalent and ambiguous in this sentence out of our commission. And I advocate for that, which isn't quite this.
You could certainly ask them to come in for a certain period of time
Right.
during every meeting.
But
or
that's us
something like that.
asking.
Then we wouldn't have to change the language.
Right.
And
I'm not quite sure if I understood that fully. I don't think it looks how I'd like it to look, to have the police as part of this at every meeting, whether they come in for 5 minutes or half an hour or an hour. We need to separate ourselves from the police department. We are here to talk about police-community relationships. There are 2 parts to that, and one part cannot have more of a seat at the table than anyone else. So I am against, in any official way, having the police attend every meeting. Let's just ask them to come when we want them to come. Let's invite them for the first few months. Say, we'd love you to come. It'll be on our agenda, but they'd be coming at our invitation.
So the whole purpose of this board is to kind of bridge the relationships between the community and the police. And if we're inviting the community, we have to include the police. If you're not going to invite the police but invite the community, they're going to look at it like we're against them. So we have to keep everything, we have to be even-handed. If we're community policing, the community is more than welcome to be here. We're on CAT TV. The police should be more than welcome to be here. I don't think we have to specifically tell them that they need to have representation here, but the door should be open for anybody that wants to come through, or we're not really doing what the select board set us up to do. We're leaving out 50% of the equation.
Right, and I'm not saying bar them from our meetings at all. I think they'll be an invaluable resource for us, and I welcome them. I just don't want them here as a standing part at every meeting the police are going to be around. That's right.
Jeff?
If they are here for every meeting, they're not able to speak as part of the discussion unless something is asked of them. Is that accurate to say? Or they would be here, but they wouldn't be part of the discussions that we were having unless we asked them a question? Or are they able to speak at any time throughout the meeting?
Who talks at the meeting is the discretion of the chair.
Yeah. If we were to invite them, say, like Marsh says, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have them on the agenda as an agenda item, then really they can't present, because it wouldn't be warned.
Right.
But you put yourself in a position then where if you do want them to speak, then are you running into opposition of the rules there too?
Why? Why would we be running into opposition of the rule?
Well,
I consider the police a stakeholder, like many other stakeholders in the community that we would want to hear from.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, we are here because the select board gave us a charge. And the charge does say that the chief of police or designee will attend all CPART meetings and report on BPD matters as requested by the chair. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having them here every meeting, asking them to report. There could be something that comes up in public comment, and maybe somebody from the comment or the public might want a response, or it might be something that the public brings up that maybe we want to put on an agenda item in a future month.
Yeah.
I do think a big part of what we're charged with doing is bridging that gap between the two Benningtons and bringing that trust in education. And I think we've had the benefit of having a lot of training with BPD. And I think it would be good for BPD to hear some of the comments coming from the public, and then maybe one of the other things we may have to talk about is if somebody from the public says, I'm not comfortable, then that's a different, conversation, and, maybe we can ask them to leave, or maybe we can ask them to come for part of it. But if the select board says that, I mean, there must have been significant discussion. And if we want to change it, then that's something that we can do. But I think we are charged with bringing the community together. And I think if they're not part of it, it's going to be harder to get their buy-in. And I think, we do have to be even-handed, and the community needs access to them. And I think that makes them a little bit more accessible. Jeff?
So right now, there's a motion and a second to do something that is in violation of the charter. So that may not work, but then the alternative would be to have a representative attend a select board meeting to ask for a change of that.
Right.
So would it be reasonable to say, if that motion is withdrawn, that we leave it as is now and make this a discussion point at the next meeting? Because it won't change. Will it change? Would it be changed before the next meeting? Or do we leave things as is, which is they're expected to be here, and then we could discuss that at the next meeting and even maybe get their input as to why it would be beneficial, or if they agree with our point of view. I don't know if that's worth that, pausing until the next meeting or not, but that was just my thought.
And that's if we could get on the agenda for the select board.
Yeah. Which we'd have to request.
Right.
It would seem to me like we ought to say what we'd like to do, and then figure out what to do about it.
Right.
Okay.
Right, if we can get through this motion, I'd like to make a motion to ask our
Okay.
liaison to request that change. So,
And there are two ways, Will and I could withdraw our motion second if we wanted to, or we could vote for it or against it, and it could fail or succeed.
well, I think as Jeff pointed out, though, technically it's not a legitimate motion because it's against what?
It's against the resolution.
That we currently have.
Does that make it an illegitimate motion?
We have a public question.
I mean, we can't.
Since we haven't defined
Can I- yes, I'm sorry. Your name?
My name is Jack.
Jack?
Yes. There are no members of the police in attendance right now. I just wanted to note that, if that's supposed to be the reading that the group is going with of the charter, which I'm not positive that section does say that they need to be in attendance at every meeting, but I wanted to note that there are no members of the police in attendance at this meeting.
So we're already in violation.
Or they,
Well, police business actually is going to take precedence.
yeah, if there's a,
As everyone knows, last night was quite
Yeah,
We'll
long
let's
night,
carry
I'm
over
sure.
to today,
Yeah.
but
okay.
So the motion, Marsh?
So I'd just like to say that I think we can take actions that may disagree with the select board, and that will start a dialogue. I don't think we can say to the select board, and this is just my opinion, I don't think we can say to the select board, we're not gonna do what you told us to do. But we can say, we really would prefer to function this way. And then they can say, oh, we hadn't thought about that, or no, we really want you to do that, we need to sit down and talk, or whatever. But I don't think we're out of order by raising questions myself that say, well, we see this differently, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the issue before us is quarterly invitations for the
Yeah.
place to come to the meeting.
Is there any more discussion on that?
And I probably should have said this a long time earlier. We should have been talking about the motion and not all the other things we talked
Exactly,
about.
right. Yes, we've got it.
I told you there was a learning curve.
We're all learning this together, so.
Now, did you want to withdraw your second?
Did you withdraw your?
Well, I was going to say I can withdraw the motion, and then you can
Okay,
withdraw the
then
second. I move to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Marsh?
Yeah, I'll withdraw my motion, second.
I would like to make a motion that we instruct our liaison to let the select board know that we would like to change, I don't know the technical language, the rule about having the police come to every meeting. We would rather have the police come upon our invitation and request that this issue get placed on the agenda at the next available meeting, which may not necessarily be the next meeting.
Do we have a second?
Tell me what's wrong with the wording if you can second it the way I said it.
Well, I can, the same reason I can second it so we can talk about it. I'll second it so we can talk about it.
So we have a second motion. Do we have any discussion?
I just go with the same comment I made earlier, that if we start doing things like excluding people from the meetings, then we're not really doing what we're supposed to be doing.
I do
Because
disagree.
first we exclude the police, and then we're going to exclude this group, and then we're supposed to be an open panel, even-handed between the community and the police department. And if we tell the police, yeah, we don't want you here, as our first statement from our first meeting, that's not going to present a lot of buy-in from the police. They're immediately going to take us as being police-hating people that just, don't really care what they have to say. And I think if we're truly going to be effective, whether we agree with what the police do, or their training, or their methods, or not, that's not what we're here for. We're here to bridge the gap between the community and the police, and work with them on training methods to make the relationships better between the community and the police, and build trust. And I don't think we can do that by excluding them. We need their involvement, we need the community's involvement, we need buy-in from everybody, or this just is not going to work, in my opinion.
Robert?
I disagree that we're talking about excluding anyone. We wouldn't be barring anyone from being here. Like it was said, if they came of their own volition, they would be coming as part of the public, in which case they're free to say whatever they want. I'm happy to invite the police here as much as anybody wants to invite them. I don't want their presence forced upon us. I don't want anyone's presence forced upon us. I say again, I'm happy to invite them here. I also want to say, if we start getting in the business of saying, well, if we do this, we might piss somebody off, we're not going to get much accomplished. The police, I think one thing, we knew it anyway, we learn from our training with them. They're very professional. They take their jobs very seriously. I think they're a pretty open-minded group. I have trouble believing that they would get together and say, well, we're not going to cooperate with these people anymore. So we've got to do what we think is right for the community and not do anything in fear of how anyone's going to respond. So again, I'm happy to invite them. I'm happy to see them here. I just don't want their presence forced upon us, forced upon our meetings.
Point of order. Am I allowed to do that?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but
I'm just curious about what's the best way for us to handle the fact that there wasn't a public comment section at the beginning of the meeting this time. So does that mean that there's no public comment at this meeting, that starts at the next one? Or is there some way for us to do an adjustment because it's a special circumstance since it's the first meeting?
It's an organizational meeting, and they haven't determined how they're going to handle public comment yet. That's the third agenda item.
So we don't have public comment right now?
There's no procedure.
There's no procedure?
There's no procedure for it.
That clarifies it, okay.
Right.
So just, but we could make time at the end of the meeting to have public comment today, right? Or would that be a change of the agenda and we couldn't do that? I thought it was pretty standard practice for the public open meeting law, which I don't know, I don't understand. But I thought it was pretty common practice that if you're going to have a public meeting, you've got to give people a chance to talk.
I would leave that discretion to your chair, but I would agree with you.
I agree. Public comment is fine. We encourage it as long as we're not breaking any rules because it is just organizational. But I would certainly recognize Jack.
Yeah, I just, looking at the select board's charge, specifically about police attendance at meetings, it seems to me that the wording is intended to mean that when the CPARB chair asks for police attendance, they are expected to attend every meeting they are asked to be at. So the charge reads, this, let me see. The chief of police or designee will attend all CPARB meetings and report on BPD matters as requested by the CPARB chair.
Okay.
But it says they will attend every meeting.
Yes.
Well, it's
As requested by the CPARB chair.
And then answer questions as requested, right? I guess that's a,
I think the language may not be entirely
yeah.
clear, but my reading of that is that the intention from the select board was that if police are asked to attend, they must attend. But I obviously leave that to you to decide.
I'd like to see that, yeah.
So it's an ambiguous sentence. It could be read either way, I think.
See, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
My arm's it's a little tired, but no, that's fine.
I'll hold it for you.
Thank you. No, originally I was going to comment that I think it's important that we follow what the select board had established. Now with this, I think I would change to say, could we or should we request clarification of what they meant by that? And then make a determination after we have that clarified. So that was all my comments.
So, do we have any other discussion?
Do you remember discussion about this sentence? I don't remember hearing
This
discussion
was a
about
long time ago. And I don't remember, I think that language actually came out of the original
that.
task force recommendations.
I don't think, maybe, I don't think so. And what, I guess I would say another thing, and one of the things that, two things. One is, I hope we're not going to spend all of our time making sure nobody gets offended, because there's going to be a decision we're going to make that somebody's going to have different thoughts about it, at least, even if they don't dislike it. And at the same time, one of the issues that we ran into in the task force was people feeling unsafe sharing critical feedback. And if somebody wants to provide feedback, this is a public meeting. So there's no such thing as private feedback. And at the same time, I know from the comments that I've heard that there are some people who will feel intimidated about sharing their critical comments if the police are present officially. And it's just something to put in our hats, because there are the number one thing on our interviews was people feeling unwilling to make critical feedback about the police for two reasons. One of them is because they're afraid of being identified and targeted and somehow or another being hurt from having said something critical. And the other one is feeling discouraged that nobody would pay attention to them if they did talk. So anyway, I just wanted to keep that in our minds because it's a whole mixed, that's a whole mixed statement, you know.
So, at this point, I think I should withdraw this motion.
I'll waive my second.
Okay. And I'm not making a motion yet, but perhaps, as Jeff said, we should ask our liaison to get clarification from the select board on this. And if they want any testimony from us, we could, come to a meeting, a select board meeting.
Well, part of my job is to report back to the board at our select board meetings, where it is a standard, it's a standing item. So I could ask Jeannie to adjust the language to allow for discussion of what we intended by that, if that's what you want me to do.
What language?
To clarify that language.
To clarify the language, right, yes, right. And if you or one of us could give them a little background on why we're asking this question, it might help.
Do you think that could get on the next agenda or the one after that?
Oh, it'll be on the next one.
Wow.
What day is that?
Well, I'm going to be reporting anyway.
Yeah.
At the next meeting.
Oh, your report is on the
Beyond
agenda.
And in that report, I could say they want clarification on this language. And, we can discuss that at that time. If Jeannie wants to make a specific note about that on the agenda, as a subheader under my report, she could do so. I would recommend you have somebody there to speak for the group.
I think we should have the opportunity to tell them where the question has come from.
Right.
And that would need to be Kelly according to what they
Be
told
our
me.
chair.
Yeah, it will be the chair's responsibility. Of course, you're all welcome.
Oh, yeah.
When is that meeting? What day?
What's that?
What day is that
Maybe
meeting?
November 7th?
What's the
7th.
Okay.
I think, no, because it's not going to be, it was just this past week, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think it'll be the 7th.
The Monday?
It's always a Monday.
Monday the
The
7th.
first and third, the first and third Monday.
That's the first.
When you're asking for clarification, maybe that issue about familiarizing getting the training of the BPD to the community side of it, since you've had 9 hours of training from the BPD about the work that they do, it might be wise to say, and we would like to invite them early on to become familiar with the community side of the story.
Our next meeting is the 14th.
Okay. Oh, that's right, 2nd and 4th.
Second
I'm
and
sorry.
fourth.
I
Oh,
think
second
it
and
was
fourth, I thought it was first.
second and
Second and fourth.
And at what time?
6 o'clock.
6 to 9, but don't hold me.
Ish. Can we put ish? That's right.
Okay. So the motion,
There is no motion.
no motion, no second, we're just clarifying,
Moving on.
okay. Are there any other standing items, anything else that we need to consider putting on the agenda?
I have a question, I guess point of order. Are we doing motions right now to add to just the next agenda, or are we doing this to add to all agendas moving forward?
It's all
Okay,
just
so,
the meeting
okay.
structure.
Okay.
It's the meeting
Standing
structure.
item would be every meeting going forward.
Okay.
Will be just-
I was just going to say, okay.
For example, the select board, we have standing items on the town, meeting the town vision, which this will fall under. Where we have reports back on various items going on in the town that fit under that umbrella. So I think if you form subcommittees and stuff, you may want to start looking more toward other standing items.
We can always add them though, right?
You can always add them
Always
and remove, you can add them and remove them at your discretion.
I would just ask you, as you're figuring all of this out, to remember that you're called a review board, and that has some weight to it, I think. I appreciate the sort of bridging role, but you are here as a review board because there has been identified some things that the community is concerned about. I would also ask that you consider as much as possible, as part of your agenda, that you have data presented to you that you can review, and that you have some way that data-based information is before you on a regular basis.
That's a great point, the review.
Mhm.
So that's a great point, the review board.
Mhm.
I actually wrote that in all caps and double underlined. As a reminder.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other standing items? Did we want to add data at this point, or do we want to?
I think we would have to figure that out,
Yeah.
right? As we
What we want.
What we want and when.
Any other standing items before we move on to the next agenda item? So the next agenda item is public comment rules and placement at the beginning or the end on the agenda. So, any motions to?
Can I ask a question first? What is the format at select board meetings right now for public comment?
Right now, we have public comment at the beginning
Okay.
of every meeting. We request that people keep their comments to 3 minutes or less.
Okay.
And if they have questions or comments that require some sort of a response from us, that they basically lay it all out and then go have a seat. And then we'll, respond as appropriately. That prevents any back and forth going, which would be a violation.
Okay.
Well, public comments also are not supposed to be anything that's on the agenda.
Exactly. So the other thing you have to decide is if you want to allow public comment on agenda items.
Right.
We do. The school board, for example, does not. You don't have to. That's at the discretion of, that's for you guys to decide this evening.
So they merely comment, there's no back and forth discussion?
Well, if it's on an agenda item, then it's a little looser because it's been warned.
Okay.
So people are there to actually, it's a discussion at that point.
If it's on.
But just a straight up public comment at the beginning of the thing, it's supposed to be on non-agenda items, and it's not really supposed to involve any back and forth.
Okay.
Because that becomes a conversation, which is a violation of the meeting law.
Where somebody might have wanted to be there for that if they knew it was gonna happen. Okay.
Yeah, I just make a motion that we mirror the select board on their public comment procedures and policies.
I'll second that. And then I have a question. Is there a cap to how long in an evening? Could it go on for an hour or?
That's at your chair's discretion, and it's really situational.
Okay.
Usually you give about 15 minutes on the agenda
Yeah,
for
usually.
it, but
But like, for example, on
fluctuate.
the other night at the meeting, there were a lot of people that had a lot of things to say, and, we went, I think, 40 minutes over on that item.
Okay.
I think what's important is that at the select board, each person making a comment is limited to 3 minutes. Now, if you had 100 people, that'd be 300 minutes.
Right.
That's fair.
Right.
The problem is when someone's been up there for 10 minutes
Yeah,
and
that's not-
won't sit down.
Right.
And that's where all the tension comes from. So
Okay.
I could easily mirror the select board's policies, procedures regarding
Yeah,
public.
because I think it's important that people have room to speak up front, but then as we're going through our agenda, I mean,
Yes.
our job is, this whole back and forth between and reviewing. So I think communication is going to be very important, and what better time to do it than when we're all here.
So the select board, it's my understanding, the public comment section is at the beginning. It's limited to about 3 minutes a person. If it continues on after that, it would be considered for an agenda item at a future meeting. And there's also the opportunity to have public comment during different agenda items. And that's what we would do the same, similar when you go to the select board. If you do have public comment, when you go up to the podium, when you come in, there's a log list. People sign in, write their comment, or not what they, like their general topic. And so we would mirror all of that work. That's the motion.
I believe, I didn't
Yep.
know.
I think that's, okay. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So it's unanimous. We will follow the select board's format for public comment. It will be at the beginning of the meetings and during agenda items.
And 3 minutes.
Limited to 3 minutes.
Okay.
And then when we're discussing agenda items, it will be up to you
Well,
how long we're going to go.
Yeah.
And it's up to you guys to communicate to her if there are items that you want that you think should be on the agenda.
Right. Well, I hope we get to talk about that tonight, how any of us go about getting an item on the agenda. Because I've been on boards here where the chair said, well, it's got to go through me, and ask me, and if I agree, I'll put it on the agenda. I would like for any of us to be able to put anything on the agenda at any time. I don't know how to make a motion about that, or what. I don't even know if we're there yet, but I'm hoping we'll all have the opportunity to freely put items on the agenda without scrutiny and approval.
So am I allowed, I don't know, do we need to make a motion to talk about this?
Or that could be at your discretion, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, that has to be a motion.
Oh, I don't know, I just wanted to comment, and I wanted to follow the rules. So
Yeah,
it's my understanding that the chair and the vice chair work on the agenda together with input from the committee and the community.
Right.
Because the community might come up with something that they want us to talk about that we haven't even thought about.
Right.
Or the
So we
police
want to make
department.
sure we have that.
And the police is part of the community, let's not separating the police from the rest of the town. We're all in the same boat here. Yeah, I just want to, like I say, all I'm trying to say is, I like to be able to think that if there was something on my mind that I wanted to discuss, I could call you two up and say, please put this on the agenda, and you'd say, okay, as opposed to, well, let us think about it, we'll tell you later.
Should requests be made through email for agenda items, or can they be verbal outside of the meetings?
Oh, yeah. I would think it'd have to be, you'd have to be able to do it through email.
Yeah, I mean, well,
It's good to have a
there can't be any
picture.
back and forth on it.
No,
Well,
just,
it can be
Right.
between two people.
just a request.
Yeah, just to keep it all public and on the up and up.
Yeah.
I think that practice would
You
probably.
just have to remember it has to be in enough advance notice to be able to get that agenda
Oh,
posted.
absolutely.
But other than, yeah,
And just for clarification, you would just send it to Kelly, correct?
Yeah, it's the group.
Well, and we're-
So we're not breaking any of the public meeting rules,
Right.
right? We just send it to her.
Yeah, that's fine.
Her and the vice chair, or just her?
I would have thought the vice chair as well.
Let's keep everything through.
right.
That's what it's
Just
gonna
say,
be.
yeah.
And what was that, what was the last thing said? Just through the chair?
Just, yeah.
Okay.
So I go to another committee meeting of one of the boards of the town, and I had a couple of things. The chair always asks for if people in the public have things that they like included on the agenda. And so I had something I hoped to put in the agenda, and we had a discussion about it, and he had some different ideas. Not that he said, no, I won't do anything like what you're talking about, but rather he used his discretion to shape the agenda according to what he thought was best. So, you know, I was just thinking of your comments earlier. Certainly if the chair is just trying to stifle you, that would not be appropriate.
Right.
But on the other hand, the chair might think, well, Rob, you've got a particular, you know, when did you stop beating your wife type?
Right. Just
request.
before I came.
Yeah, and, you know, those kinds of loaded questions or loaded agenda items that I would hope the chair would say, no, let's try to reword what you're hoping
Right,
for us to
right.
talk about.
Right, no, absolutely. Okay, so, I don't know if that needs a motion or anything.
No.
I don't think so.
Discretion of the chair.
You could also add as a standing agenda item, upcoming agenda items,
Oh, okay.
which is what it is a standing item on our agendas.
I make a motion, we add that as a
I
Second, okay. So we have a motion that was seconded to have standing, upcoming agenda items as a standing item on the agenda. Any discussion on that?
That was Jeff and.
Yeah.
Jeff and Scott, and Will. Was there?
A few people.
Sorry, we left out of minutes this time.
Yeah.
Next time we'll put you first.
Any discussion on that? Okay, so then we have a vote to include future agenda items as a standing item on the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. Any abstentions? So the motion has passed. We will have upcoming agenda items on the agenda for our meetings. Any?
Oh, I was just going to ask, so once we go through these items, am I able to make another motion? Basically, I was going to make a motion that if they had anything to talk about, that we would give them time.
I would recommend you do that, yeah.
And we can do that at this point. I didn't know where the timing would be.
Well, are you finished with the,
So the last agenda item was the public comment rules and placement at the beginning or end on the agenda.
so yeah,
So I think we've completed our agenda.
So I make a motion that for this meeting, we allow public comment at this.
We have a motion by Jeff, seconded by Robert, to allow public comment. Any discussion?
That we not stop then, because I have some items to suggest for the next agenda.
As do I.
Okay. We just voted to make one agenda item to take items for the next
Right.
agenda. And I didn't want to leave that behind. I'm happy to let the public talk. but no.
Right.
Okay, yes, we'll do that.
Do we have to vote?
Can we vote to have public comment?
Aye.
Aye. Who made the motion?
I'm making too many motions, I guess.
I second.
Do we have any public comment?
After we made this.
Well, now I feel
Say something profound.
I just want to say thank you for the reasoned way that you're beginning to talk with one another and to at least notice that there are going to be some sticky issues and that you're getting ready to handle those. So I'm appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would add that I hope, as you consider standing agenda items going forward, and also how you do want to codify, if you do in any way, the involvement that the police have in terms of meeting attendance or information presentation, to also call out the idea that you can be a mechanism for helping data get shared with the public, not just with the oversight or the review board for the purposes of your work, but also that you can be a conduit to the community and compel more data about policing to be shared with the community via your meetings and the agenda items that you set and how you set them.
Any question? Is all the data that the police would present at this meeting public information? Automatically?
I think right now the stuff you are allowed to look at is,
Okay.
It would have
Anonymized,
to be.
right? It's
Anonymized?
yeah,
anonymized.
anything's
That's
major
right.
redacted.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
because we don't really have the right to see anything. We got that training, but it was only an awareness level training.
Right, until
Okay.
they change the legislation.
Right.
Then
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah,
But not everybody will have the same access to the data that is going to be presented to us, so we have to find creative ways to put that out there.
I think that's sort of what I'm getting at, just in terms of how you ask for data, and even what you may ask for beyond what, you may ask for certain information because of work that you're undertaking. You may also be able to ask for a version of that that could be made public, and I guess I'm just asking you to keep in mind that there are many people in the community who would benefit from seeing more data about how, policing happens in the community, and that's, I think, part of the logic behind having this board in place, and as many opportunities to find avenues to the community and for there to be more knowledge around it. I hope you'll take those opportunities.
Thank you.
I believe that the communications coordinator, Joan Spivak, has made himself available to you, and he has a voice and he has a place in communicating what happens in the town, and very good ways. I've been watching, many of us have, of the banner and what it is that they are publishing, and so to have, and as Clark Adams said at one of the select board meetings, that it's important for the community to hear some of the positive things, to hear what's in progress, what's happening. And CPARB is a perfect example of that. So that, to enlist Jonah's assistance in getting the word out so that the community, because it's going to take a while to overcome the skepticism and doubt and outright fear among some people about what's really going on. So you're doing good work, and make sure it gets out.
And perhaps find ways for you yourselves to share experiences, or, write letters to the editor in the banner, or find many ways for you yourselves to engage beyond just the work that gets done.
It's a little tricky. One of the things that we were informed of in our last meeting is that the chair will be the person to speak to the public.
Right.
So, and if, like, I were to write a letter to the editor about policing issues, it would be hard for people not to think that that's the thought of this group. So we were really urged to be very careful about not expressing opinions publicly about what's happened here separate from during the meeting or in a public way.
I'm more thinking about sharing updates about the work of the board than individual opinions.
I think it's important that we be as transparent as possible because we are new. I think, as you can tell tonight, we're all learning. We're going to make some mistakes along the way and try really, really hard not to make the same mistake twice. But I think that, we all want to make everything better, and I think a big part of that is just conversation and getting it going. It's a complex and at times controversial issue. It's very emotional, and I think just having the opportunity to get people and start, bringing people together to talk, even if it's something that you don't really want to hear, you still have to hear it, and as long as it's presented in a respectful as possible way, and getting that data, collected and out, I think is going to be really, important, and something that we're going to learn what data we need to collect and how we need to get that out there. But that, I know that's important for all of us. And thank you for taking the time to come down here with us this evening.
What's next?
Marsh.
So we're talking about ideas for possible
So
agenda items.
now we'll talk about upcoming agenda items.
Yep. So I have 5 ideas. One, I have many more than 5 ideas.
Yeah,
Only 5 I'm going to
The only 5 we're going to bring up tonight.
So the first one sort of resonates with something Rob said earlier about us getting a personal sense of what we're trying to do and why we're here. Because this didn't just start out of some abstract desire to have a CPAR. And there are things that have happened that have been very troubling in our town. So we had the IACP report, and I think that would be part of looking at what are the concerns that have started this all rolling. I've learned that I cannot, to the best I know, share any of the reports that people gave, but I can share a summary of those reports of interviews that were made by the task force.
What do you mean by summary?
The issues that were raised in those interviews and how often they came up.
Right.
Which I think, at least for me, gives me some sense of priority, because some things came up once and some things came up 23 times. And the 23 times to me says, ooh, this is something that's getting repeated concern.
Right. If I could ask you questions based on what you're saying, why do you believe that you cannot turn that data over to everyone on this board so we can review it and use it? I think it's very odd that somehow you're the only one who can see that.
Well, the committee could see it, and the people who were interviewed, here's I think I should and could say this. Each person who was interviewed was assured that their comments were confidential. And the nature of what they shared many times is unique. And if we reported accurately what they shared in the interview, it could be identified who they were. And that's something that we really are very concerned not to do.
And I share that concern. I don't think that's an absolute block. I think you've got a lot of very interesting data. I would love to be able to see. I think it's very important. It was collected.
Robert,
This is the group that
I'm
you.
sorry, am I allowed to?
Yeah, you didn't do anything.
Go ahead.
I think that you need to check with Tom, because you missed some of the training that we had that last session, and all of that was covered in the last session, and it has to do with when we take information in, it all becomes public knowledge. So you risk harming somebody who confided and thought that they were doing. So I think that it was part of what we went through with the training last time. So.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I like the summary idea.
Yeah.
Right, something. Yeah.
So, that sort of getting a personal sense of why we're doing this. The IACP report, I think, would be great to be discussing the task force summary and the traffic research. We might not get that all sorted out in one fell swoop. We might have a task force or a team or a committee. I don't like the word subcommittee, because a subcommittee means a smaller than a committee, and we're a board, so you don't jump from a board to a subcommittee, you jump to a committee. But anyway, regardless of that nitpicky thing. So that's the first item that I had on here.
So what is it specifically then, to review all those things every meeting?
No,
Oh,
no.
this is for
This
next
is just
month.
an agenda
These are
item.
things that you
And
want on a
And we
future
might-
upcoming agenda.
Okay.
So to start exploring that, we might have a committee that, for example, might be 3 of us that would read the IACP report
Okay,
and go
gotcha.
over it and say, this is great, look at what we've accomplished, and oh, there are these 3 things here that we still need to work on. This one really is pressing or whatever. Second thing, collaborative community policing. Starting to think about how we can hear from people who feel marginalized from our community and what their experiences are with policing. Parallel to that, training skills for us and for police who might be involved in something like that, and how to hear well when we're receiving criticism. So that we can be effective communicators and effective listeners. Third thing, training. evaluating training, discerning needs based on community input, and implicit bias training. So that whole area, which again, we're not going to get all done in one fell swoop. And then we've had this discussion about data, and I'm not sure what data is even. So exploring this whole idea of gathering data and evaluating it. And you may have noticed that Bruce Lee Clark sent us an article of some national organization that works with policing data. And I think you all got a copy of it in an email today, hopefully. Nope. And you did.
Can I take a comment on that?
This is what it looks like. So it came
When
out
was that sent?
today. Today?
What time? Because I checked earlier.
You were on there, you were on there. Just-
No. You know what? I think I just have the 6 people, and I'll put you on that list.
So I'm curious, I have to say, why Bruce sent that to you instead of sending it to all of us?
I don't know, except he's a personal friend of mine, so he may have just thought.
Oh, okay.
And we've had many discussions on policing.
Okay.
But if you when you get your email,
I got it.
you got it. It said in there is that I might want to share that with you all.
Right.
Which wasn't telling me.
Which I also found strange, but, and he also
Well,
said.
because of all this public
Yeah.
reading law thing, I don't know.
Well, and he also said,
They're on the side
feel free
first.
to share it with the appropriate board members, and I didn't quite know what that meant either, so.
Well, it may be about the public reading law too.
Oh, okay.
I may not be, I don't know. I don't,
You're just checking your inbox.
I'm just trying to pass along without saying much,
Yeah.
because I don't want to say much and get in trouble.
Right, no, right, I understand.
And the last thing that I had for us to request on our agenda was to consider whether we want to work with legislators in the process of getting select board the authority to delegate the review role. That's the idea.
So how do those items fit within the mandate?
I think they right in, I went through the mandate to look at this. The only thing that isn't in the mandate is whether we would want to work with legislators to get this, move forward the legislation. And I don't think that's against the mandate, but if
No,
the select board feels like it's against the mandate, I mean, the rest of this is just straight out of the, I think, what the mandate says.
I wonder, I'm glad you put all this thought into all these things.
Yeah?
Like your first example, you should have all read the IAC report, and I think that's just a given. I think a lot of
I
that
don't know
stuff
if we
in your
have.
first,
Do we all have a copy of the IAC report?
Yes.
it's been public forever. So
Yeah, but we don't all have a copy of it.
No, it's on the website.
I'm not arguing with you. But the reason I brought it up was because I was pretty sure that some of us haven't seen it.
Right.
And it seems like reviewing it to see where we're at is really, could be fruitful.
It could be, I just don't know that we need to do it in a public meeting. I'm just not sure how much, you have to use your time efficiently.
So let me say a little bit more about what I had in mind, was that not we necessarily do all these things in a public meeting or with everybody present. We might have committees that would work on each one of these things, report back, and then facilitate a public discussion on them.
Okay, so maybe the agenda item we're looking for from you is actually to discuss forming subcommittees.
That might be, but that wasn't what I was suggesting for the agenda. I'm not opposed to that,
Right.
but I'm just saying these are some issues that I think we would want to think about together, about how we want to do it. It might be to have a subcommittee, might be to have a discussion, might be to ask somebody to go research it, it might be to have a public meeting talking about it. I don't know what we'll do. I was just raising these things as primary things for us to consider.
Robert?
Hopefully for next month's meeting, I would like the chair to ask the town's communication director, Jonas Spivak, to come to our meeting to begin a preliminary discussion of forming a communications plan.
Of forming a what?
A communications plan. We're talking about how to get things out to the community. I'd like to sit down with Jonah and see what kind of ideas he has on that.
For CPAR.
For CPAR, yeah, right.
As the standard right now, any public communications would go through your chair to me, and then I would reach out to the appropriate town body. The idea being is we don't just want to inundate everybody with emails from everybody, you know, so it makes sure that
It would be from the chair. I don't know who I'm asking. If I'm asking you, fine. But I'd like to.
But I'm not, I don't think that's a horrible idea.
Wouldn't be talking about anything specific. I just want his ideas on how we can best communicate with the community.
And brainstorming, I think, would be really great because
Yes.
one of the things that's really important to me is two-way communication.
Right, how we take information from the community.
Having a plan for that. I think
And
is-
He is the
Jonah,
person that you, if we were gonna do a survey or anything like that, we
Right.
could work with Tom and Jonah,
Yep.
and he would help us with that.
yeah, so that's my request, that we ask Jonah to come to our next meeting for a preliminary discussion on forming a communications plan.
Any-
Can I?
Did you have a question?
Just a comment. I'm just wondering where some of the media outlets fit into what you're thinking about. I mean, when and how might you have a conversation with the banner about if it might do a regular feature from you, or Cat TV, or the other things that people right here in the community pay.
That's what I want.
And
So I think
that's what-
that's why I want to
Jonah,
figure that
so
out.
he can help with all
Yes.
of that.
He's our communications director, that's why I want to meet him.
Jack?
Yeah, I just have a question about the two-way street part. Right now, how would a citizen get in touch with CPARB?
We all have emails, so you could
Where-
email us,
where-
or
where-
just email
On
the
the
chair.
town
But they
website.
wouldn't know.
And so they would email a board member, or they would email all the board members, or there's a CPARB community comment email?
Well, and that might be part of that
That might be
discussion with
part of the
Jonah, is to
discussion.
figure out
Would like to
how
help us with that.
Well, I'm curious if there's some resolution or some way the board could possibly discuss this in some fashion now, because there's a month until the next meeting, and someone may want to get in touch now that it's an entity that exists.
I don't have an answer to
Would
that.
you,
Yeah, I would really recommend talking to Jonah about it. All town communications go through Jonah. Is
Communications from people to the town.
From the
go
board,
through
the
Jonah?
committee to the town.
No, from people to
he
the
may-
committee.
I understand your question.
Yeah.
He may, I would say for this month, they would probably want to email the chair. And maybe we would want to set up maybe like an info app address or something like that. But that's something we'd have to talk about with Jonah.
And you might have an understanding perhaps that if anyone gets something, they send it to Kelly.
Yep.
And that's K Carroll, KCARROLL @benningtonvermont.org. BenningtonVT.org, sorry. BenningtonVT.org.
And the town website will be updated with the fact that you are now the chair and Will is the vice chair?
It will be with that, I don't know how quickly. Because we are trying to transition to a new website right now, so Jonah's pretty busy.
But links to our town emails are available already, so you'll know who's the chair, and anybody you want to tell, you can.
I understand. I'm thinking if someone wants to kind of approach the board in its official capacity to
Yeah.
review some sort of interaction with the police, they may not feel entirely comfortable, or the interface may not be one that's particularly welcoming if it's individual addresses versus the board as an entity.
Good point.
Excuse me, could I ask you to pause for a moment?
An hour,
Two.
an hour and a half.
Okay, thank you.
if somebody emails our CPARG email addresses, somebody could do a freedom of information request on those emails. Is
That's
that
correct.
accurate? So that's not exempt.
I wouldn't,
From
I shouldn't
that.
have personal stuff on there, yeah.
Right, but I'm just saying,
No, but if
it
somebody
sounded
had
like he was
something-
saying if they weren't comfortable maybe coming to a meeting to talk about something,
Yeah,
they would
that's something
email it,
we
but
can
that's
do.
still potentially.
No, I understand that's how it operates. I'm just thinking of someone who has an issue or something that they want to bring to the board, potentially being more comfortable with the
Yep.
idea that they're contacting the board as a whole rather than having to select from a list of
Individuals.
individuals.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
And Will has been saving his request.
Yes, I was gonna say, so do you want us to make a motion, or can we just tell you more or less what we want right now without going through that process? I don't know. if
First,
We
we
haven't
don't
really
know.
had motions.
Upcoming
so-
agenda.
This upcoming agenda is just talk.
Okay,
Just
yeah,
talk.
perfect. Just
Okay.
double checking, verifying that. Okay, so I have two requests, and I can send this to you in writing to get it more exact, but pretty much the first one was, I wanted it to be around generating ideas for community building policies and proposals with an emphasis on increasing accountability and trust with the police department. And then the second one is looking at the data-based approaches that we were discussing over here at equitable allocation of policing resources, and then further discussing those critical areas that we're considering, and then making recommendations based off of that.
Are you gonna send those to all of us? That'd be a lot easier if we try to write
I
them
was
all.
gonna say, I will send it to you and you can put it in the, and I'll send it
for
to
the
the, oh,
minutes,
yeah,
yeah.
for the report, and then I'll send it to you as well, yeah, but do those.
Well, we're gonna work on the agenda together.
Okay, yes, we can do that, yep, at your discretion.
Scott, anything you want on the agenda?
I think we're gonna have plenty of time.
Let's just get through Marsh's
Yeah,
stuff.
We're all gonna agree on everything,
That's
and
right.
we're gonna shoot out here, we'll be done in 10 minutes.
Not necessarily for your next meeting, but I would hope that you would think sort of broadly about this whole endeavor and think about it in terms of safety in the community and how the community is safe and how people feel safe in the community. And what I'm referring to is the fact that there are other services in the community that can come to bear on some of the things that the police are now handling. And I would hope you wouldn't lose sight of that as part of what you're looking at. You're not only, I hope, looking at the police department. You're looking at the other resources that there are in the community.
And this whole concept of collaborative policing, that I think the department has been really working hard on this year too, in terms of reaching out to both discover what other agencies are out there and make that available to people who are in trouble to work cooperatively. So like the mental health training that the officers all went through this year, which they were so excited to have because that's a for example of that kind of.
And I'd like you to consider that maybe it isn't all about policing. That the whole idea that when the issues come up in the community that need attention, that it's not only police, it doesn't all necessarily get handled through policing.
Yes.
That might be part of the whole issue.
Yeah, and this,
Right.
again, this collaborative.
It just, you're thinking
Yeah.
a bit more broadly as you're doing all of your deliberations and thinking about who you want to hear from and what your task is.
I'm thinking maybe not quite so broadly as far as some of the things that you have said, because I know in some of our trainings we've talked about, we're the first board, and we're laying the groundwork right now for what the future boards will do. So I'm thinking that some of our meetings we should consider. We really need to introduce ourselves. I mean, I don't know if we know us, but we really need to tell the community who we are, why we're here, what we hope to accomplish. And I think we need to start, we also need to look at education. We need to make sure that people feel comfortable coming forward. We need to build their trust. And we want, we need to make sure that people feel comfortable talking to us, and we need to make sure that the police department also feels comfortable. Because we need everybody to buy in to collaborative change. So I would hope that we could also look at not only the education that we got in communicating that out, like what did we get for education from BPD and what are they doing, and getting that information out to the community so that they're more informed as well. As much as it's important for BPD to hear how people in the community feel when they see somebody that's an officer, based on their experiences. So I would hope that we would get some education and educating them about and the public about who we are and where what got us to where we are today with the training and everything.
And I like to suggest we start that even now in saying who we are, because people who are watching don't have any idea who we are. So I'm Marsh Hudson-Knapp.
I'm Robert Ebert.
Jeff Vickers.
I'm Will Greer.
Scott Richmond.
I'm Kelly Carroll.
That was easy. And you?
I introduced myself at the beginning of it.
Oh,
You're an extra.
he did.
Could we make that an item on the agenda, that we give like a minute or two speech about
Some
who we
of
are,
the
our
more of an
experience with the
introduction.
police? That was kind of brought up, how our experiences with the police shaped our ability and desire to be on this board.
Anyone else have anything else to add? Robert, you look like you wanted to say.
I was just wondering what's next.
Motion to adjourn.
On our agenda.
I just want, before we do adjourn, I just want to ask if there's anything else that you would like to see on an upcoming agenda.
Thank you for asking.
And I'll say one thing, then. You three, please help get the word out. Get more people to come. Tell them to come and talk to us.
We promise to be more
How else
organized.
to do it?
Yes.
Hopefully we can better.
Well,
You can promise, I'm not.
the first one will be over,
We'll try to.
so we have a little bit more.
The organization isn't as important as the integrity, and that comes through pretty clearly.
We hope so. We really, we want to be approachable, open, inclusive, supportive, and helpful to make Bennington the Bennington it can be. So, does anyone else have anything to add, or do we want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Do I need to keep track of who made the motion?
Adjourn until
And what time?
Thursday, November 17th at
7:32.
6 p.m. in the firehouse, and Will and I will be together. We'll have the agenda out, and that will be posted on the website.
So we have to vote on the motion.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
You still have to vote.
But vote on, do we
Adjourn.
vote on a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Can we vote on a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Aye.
I was saying, yeah.
So Jeff, who seconded?
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.